Hi, it's Lois again. How to stay present and consciously deal with your child when they are triggering you. This is such a huge one to open and look into and go deep and deeper and deeper and deeper into a longer journey in conscious parenting, in spiritualism, in wherever you are on your path. And first of all, what you've got to realise is that it's not actually you that's getting triggered, it's your ego mind, your conditioning that is getting triggered, and this is what is being broken down. It's also not your child that is triggering you, it's either their soul or their ego that is triggering your ego mind. So that in itself can just help us stay present and just that inner knowing in those moments where we feel really irritated or angry or frustrated or we want to shout, etc. That is like the first step in just recognizing actually it's either their soul that is triggering something within my soul that I'm ignoring within myself, or whatever the case may be, or it might be that and children always come and operate from the soul space anyway. But as they get a little bit older, sometimes it can come from conditioning to conditioning. So it might be like ego to ego. But generally, most of the time, especially when children are interacting with their parents, they're coming from the soul space, and that's why you get so triggered or your ego gets so triggered, because it just feels like the conditioning is breaking down, and that is painful. And so often when we don't want to look at something, it's coming up again and again and again and again. So that's why it can feel like, oh, for goodness sake, like not this situation again, or why can't you just do this, what I want you to do again. It's not you that wants them to do it, it's the ego, and the ego mind is not bad, that's just what that is. But we have been conditioned to believe that we are the personality, the ego, the mind, whatever you want to describe that as, the rules, the form, the functioning, the societal belief systems. We've been programmed since birth. When we come into the world as this beautiful beaming baby that's just pure soul, we then get programmed, and our brains get programmed to believe that we are we identify with the personality, that is our identity, when in fact your true source identity is the soul. You are a multi-dimensional being, and you are the soul in the human body having an experience here on earth through the filter of the mind. So when you actually, first of all, awaken to that and open to that knowing, that's just the first foundation that can just help anyway, because the trigger then becomes lower. It's not such a huge trigger because you realise that it's actually not you that's being triggered. The soul has no preference. The soul and the unity consciousness space, the as-me consciousness space, like the you are me, I am you, all things are connected in that oneness. The as-me consciousness, that's the space that I take my clients into. That's the space that you are going to not be triggered in when you're in that space. It's the presence. It's just being in the present moment and moving away from the duality of the mind. So the mind is always going to be good, bad, I like it, I don't like it, yin, yang, alpha, omega, like all of that. It's form, it's metaphysics, it's psychological, it's all of those kind of things. It's working and figuring it out, like what do I do in this situation, continuously going round and round in circles. And I'm not saying that stuff is bad, that's just what that is. When you align with your soul, you get there so much quicker, because that's where your child already is at. They don't have the level of conditioning yet that we do, so they're just being in the moment and they're just having a great time with life. So recognizing that actually it's it's my ego that's triggered here, it's not me, it's the ego, the mind, it's not me, it's not who I innately am, then that can just really help to lower the trigger, and almost sometimes it can just switch the trigger off completely. And then once you move back into that soul space, then you just know where to go and what to do from that space in the moment with your child. And it might be different in every single moment. But that's the first part to really recognize, is that actually I am not my mind, and right now this is just a trigger that is happening. It's not that my child is triggering me. So when we move away from like that system as well, that programming, my child is triggering me, or they always bring up triggers for me to heal, like all that stuff. When we move away from that duality space and into the singularity of the soul, then it becomes a completely different paradigm way of being, and then you simply just know what to do in the moment. So when it does happen that there's a trigger, and again, it's not placing this trigger onto them or onto you, or it just is. It's just happening right now. When that happens, then of course we can do what we just said, in knowing that that is the ego, mind, form, structure, rules, conditioning part of us. And then we can just know that whatever that is that's going on is either a belief pattern that is not true, but the bigger part of that is, it's an illusion, but the bigger part of that is that we don't have to do anything about it. We don't have to then feel like, oh, okay, I've got to go and heal my own childhood wounds and all of that stuff, or clear my karma, or cut cords and like all of that. That stuff's fine. That stuff's just not what we do when we're aligning with our soul, because that's not soul stuff, that's metaphysics. That again is figuring it out and trying to work it all out and actually going into the past and the future. It's not presence. It's not being here in this moment. Being in the moment, in the presence, is just simply being the observer, the soul, the one who is looking. You are looking at the thoughts. And again, thoughts are just energy. All the emotions are just energy. This is not bypassing yourself to not allow yourself to feel emotions. If emotions are coming up, that's fine. You feel them. But you are looking at your ego self and your body that you're housed in as the soul, feeling the emotion. And so when you're just looking, you don't need to judge it. You don't need to say whether it's good or bad, because it just is. So whatever pattern is going on within that programming system, when you just simply observe that is going on and don't judge it or don't label it or don't feel like you need to fix it in any way, then that's when the programming just kind of dissolves. And this is a process that you have to do over and over and over and over again. It just simply dissolves into either a new program that you want to reprogram the mind with, or it just kind of forms into this new way that you didn't even realize was an option. It just kind of moves in where it's meant to go. You don't need to do anything about it when you're triggered. I mean, if you feel like you're going to shout or whatever, then yeah, you can take the deep breath and walk out the room. But how often do you actually do that in those situations, really? Like, be honest. Because it goes so quickly. And that's why this practice is so useful long term, and this is a long term thing. It's not just it can be a really quick fix overnight, But it's not really a fix, it's a lifestyle. It's a choosing to consciously live in connection and calm and presence. So it's a long-term thing that requires practice, and it requires the space and the time and the quiet on your own to really meditate and be in that space of being. And then during your day-to-day life, it becomes a lot easier to implement, because you are embodying it now, because you are integrating that new system of being, that new paradigm way of being. So this is not difficult in terms of you don't have to go into the story, the pattern, the illusion, the programming that you've been programmed with, that it isn't even, it's basically came from someone else's programming and it's been programmed into you, and then you've taken it on to be your identity. That's what is, that's your reality now. So it's recognizing that actually that is not even who you are. That's got nothing to do with you. It's simply the pattern playing out. Allow the pattern to play out and just kind of go through that story, but just look at it and not judge it. And the more you get to doing this process, not just in the moments where your ego mind is triggered, but in the moments where you're not, in the moments where you're feeling calm, in the moments where you are just being, where you're feeling more filled up, in the moments when the kids are asleep and you have some time to yourself. In those moments, that's when you really ground this space in and integrate this new space. Not in the moments where you feel like you're overwhelmed and you're feeling guilty, or you're feeling despair and you're feeling like, oh my God, what do I do here? That's not it. Yes, you implement this practice in those moments when the trigger arises, yes, but to stay present and really calm in those moments and connected, the practice is actually, it needs to be worked on, or like, kind of like, what's it called? Like the muscle is worked. It's like a gaining muscle mass or whatever. You need to do that outside of situations that the trigger comes up in. And that's what many people find difficult, because obviously as busy parents are like, oh, I don't have time, or I'm so exhausted afterwards, and blah blah. But what you're doing right now is exhausting you, because it is keeping you in that addictive space of going round and round and round and round and round on a loop, trying to figure out how to be calm in those situations, and how to connect in those situations, and how to not lose your shit in those situations. So what you're doing right now is exhausting, of course. When you actually start to practice and implement this, and it may take a little while, maybe like a month or so, then it becomes easy. And the clients that I work with, and me for myself, I know that I prefer to always go in for like the long haul. And most of you watching this, if you are already consciously parenting, then you will be the same as well. So you will want to put the work in. You will want to practice outside of the situation. You will want to have the short-term difficulty, pain, whatever the thing might be, like you go all into the feeling of discomfort, short-term discomfort, and then because you know that in the long term this is going to really serve not only your child but you as well, because it always starts with you. It's really not anything to do with them. It's never about them. It's simply it's a trigger coming up from them. But you'll also notice when you begin to observe these patterns, you will notice that it's not just coming up from your child, and that's why it's not ever them triggering you, it's just something coming up, and that's all it is. So it's not, we don't need to like project and place that blame onto them anymore, or project and place blame onto ourselves because we feel like, oh, they're triggering me again and I don't know what to do about it and I just can't seem to get rid of it. You'll start to notice that it's not just them that this pattern is coming up in. It'll be your other relationships, it'll be in your work, it'll be in your money, it'll be in your health, it'll be in the things within your household. Your physical things will start breaking or whatever. Like I've just had recently a lot of things break. So it will come up this same pattern, and you know what it is. You know what is going on when you begin to align with your soul and become the observer of the thoughts, non-judgmentally, not placing them in boxes. That is what the mind does. That's what the ego does. That's how the ego feels safe, to have a label, to have a box, to fit in, to be part of something. The soul is free. The soul is free flowing. The soul is just is in each moment is what it is. And it has no preference as to whether your child is doing what the ego mind wants or not. And that is not from a permissive point of view, because sometimes when we're aligned with our souls, we also have to go through the uncomfortable spaces, the difficult parts, in order to move through and really clear out that pattern and be even deeply more grounded in that alignment. So that's it. That's it for today. If you've got any questions, please comment below, and I will speak to you next time. Lots of love. Bye.